My father announced I was cut out of the will at his 70th birthday dinner. 3 years later, I quietly signed a 2.3B deal. He had to watch from the front row. I should have known something was off the second my father requested a toast. We were at the Beaumont Club, one of those private dining rooms in Manhattan, where oil paintings of dead men stare down at you while you try to eat $120 scallops. It was his 70th birthday, the kind of night that's supposed to feel sentimental. Instead, it felt surgical. He stood up slowly, always performing, even when the stage was just his family, and raised his glass. To legacy, Martin Hartwell declared, his voice booming off the mahogany walls. And to knowing which of our children will carry it forward. I felt the table shift, not physically, psychologically. Everyone straightened slightly. My sister Juliet looked down at her napkin. She already knew. I forced myself to breathe evenly. As of this week, he continued, the Hartwell estate has been fully assigned. The family trusts the property rights, and all long-term allocations will go to Juliet. He said it so casually, like it was an administrative update, not a public execution. Juliet's jaw tightened. Her fork hadn't moved since the appetizer course. Even she didn't want this, not like this. My mother, Eleanor, always diplomatic, tried to step in. Martin, maybe this should have waited for a more private time. He waved her off with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. No. This is a family moment. It's important Avery hears this directly. If she had stayed at Columbia, completed her PhD like we planned. Like you planned, I thought. Instead of running off to code in a warehouse in Brooklyn, perhaps this conversation would have gone differently. There it was. The quiet contempt he had for everything I'd built. He didn't even know the name of the platform. He just called it coding. As if I were assembling IKEA furniture, not re-engineering how global markets process data. I thought about telling him. About Astera. About what we were showing to Google tomorrow. About the due diligence reports, the $1.9 billion valuation, the preliminary M&A terms waiting in my inbox. But I didn't. Because it wouldn't matter. To him, success only wore a suit and carried a law degree. Anything else was cosplay. I understand, I said, placing my napkin calmly on the table. Juliet earned it. She followed the blueprint. She looked up startled. There was still something human in her expression. The girl who used to sneak me sci-fi comics under the dinner table. The girl who once whispered, "You don't belong here either, do you?" She opened her mouth to speak, but I gave a quick shake of my head. It's okay, I said. Really. Congrats on the Pike and Monroe merger, by the way. You handled the equity split brilliantly. I pushed my chair back. The room was so silent you could hear the air conditioning change gears. Avery, my mother said gently, at least stay for dessert. They flew in your favorite chocolate soufflé. I paused. How touching. A $23 dessert to cushion a $50 million rejection. I have a meeting to prep for, I replied. Please enjoy the celebration. And I walked out. No dramatic slamming of doors. No shaky voice. Just clean, controlled exit. Like I was stepping off stage. Except this time, I wasn't the failed understudy. I was the one writing the next act. The city outside was buzzing, but the Uber ride back to Brooklyn felt like silence. No music, no phone calls. Just the hum of wheels and the soft glow of Manhattan fading behind me. They thought they had cut me out, but they didn't realize I'd already built my own vault. And tomorrow morning, Wall Street would learn a name they'd been too arrogant to notice: Avery Hartwell. The warehouse wasn't much, not when I first signed the lease. The floor creaked, the roof leaked when it rained. The paint was chipped, and there was a dead pigeon in the corner when I moved in. But the light, God, the light. South-facing windows, floor to ceiling. The kind of light that makes you believe you can build something that matters. They called it a phase. Dropping out of Columbia. Leaving a fully funded doctoral fellowship. Turning down clerkships at federal courts. All for code. That's what they said at every holiday dinner. She's off chasing a tech phase. As if I were obsessed with astrology, not machine learning. But what they didn't see, what they never wanted to see, was the pattern. Markets didn't crash randomly. Prices didn't spike from nowhere. There were signals, billions of them, buried in filing, sentiment, behavior. My thesis before I walked away was that chaos wasn't chaos. It was misread clarity. So I built Astera. Not alone, of course. Rowan Blake, my co-founder, my best friend, my technical sparring partner, believed in the vision from day one. We started with just 2 laptops, 4 gallons of coffee, and a pile of student loan debt. We didn't aim small. We aimed at Wall Street's jugular. By year 2, Astera could process 10 billion financial data points an hour. It could predict short-term volatility with 80% accuracy and flag regulatory risk based on linguistic shifts in corporate disclosures. We weren't just ahead of the curve, we were the curve. But no one in my family asked, not once. Juliet was closing cross-border mergers. Dad was giving ethics lectures at Yale Law. Meanwhile, I was bootstrapping predictive models in a building with exposed pipes and a raccoon problem. And I was happy until the attention started coming. First, a hedge fund sent a casual inquiry, then a PE firm in London, then a contact at BlackRock, all wanting to understand what this Brooklyn anomaly was doing with sentiment engines that outperformed Bloomberg terminals. Then came the email from Google's strategic development lead. Polite, short, direct. We're hearing remarkable things about your system. Are you open to a conversation? I stared at it for 3 hours before replying. Now the meeting was tomorrow, and the irony, my father had just erased me from the family tree right before I walked into a potential multi-billion-dollar acquisition. I should have felt triumphant. I didn't, because deep down, I knew what would happen if I told them. They'd find a way to explain it away. She got lucky. It's a hot market. That bubble will pop soon. So I stopped trying to explain. I poured myself into the work. Astera's V2 engine was nearing completion. We were testing predictive compliance model systems that could anticipate not just market trends, but legislative friction before it happened. It wasn't just innovation, it was dangerous, to the status quo anyway. And maybe that's why they pretended not to see me. Maybe they knew somewhere deep down that I wasn't just playing with code. I was building a mirror, one that reflected just how outdated their whole system had become. That night, as I ran the final simulation for our Google deck, a message lit up my screen. From Juliet. Hey, saw something about a company named Astera in the journal. Thought of you. Hope your coding project's keeping you busy. Coding project. That was the moment I realized. Even when you build a rocket, some people will still call it a paper airplane. I didn't reply to her message right away. What was I supposed to say? Thanks for checking in. The coding project is now negotiating strategic terms with Google. That would have sounded petty. And I wasn't interested in petty. Not anymore. Still, it stayed in my head. Juliet was always measured, controlled. She didn't text unless something had been simmering long enough to bubble through the cracks. We used to be close, believe it or not. Not best friend close, but same team close. 2 daughters in a family that only ever celebrated power, excellence, and prestige. Always wrapped in suits. Always speaking in legalese. She survived by playing the game. I survived by rewriting it. Growing up, she would sneak me sci-fi novels inside her law textbooks. Once she even took the blame when I installed Linux on Dad's work laptop and accidentally bricked it. But that version of Juliet She vanished somewhere between her first courtroom win and her 5th magazine feature. Now she was one of them. But maybe, just maybe, she hadn't fully forgotten. The next day was the meeting. Rowan and I prepped until 3 a.m. editing slides, calibrating models, and rehearsing the pitch until we could recite it backward. We weren't just selling software. We were offering a map of the future, where chaos became probability and gut instinct became math. When we arrived at the Google office, I felt nothing. No nerves, no rush, just clarity. The room was smaller than I expected. Clean lines, matte black walls, and 6 people on the other side of the table who didn't bother hiding their curiosity. I walked them through everything. Our engine's capabilities, our testing numbers, the way Astera's adaptive feedback loop had already outperformed Goldman's quant desk simulations by 61% under stress scenarios. They didn't ask questions, not at first, just listened. Then came the offer, $2 billion. With equity retention, performance incentives, and full product autonomy. Rowan nearly dropped her coffee. Me, I just sat there, quiet, watching. And in that moment, I didn't feel victorious. I felt cornered. Because this wasn't the dream. It was just the prize they thought I wanted. The next day, Juliet called. Not texted, called. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was neutral, practiced. Like she was trying not to sound too curious. Saw the announcement. Astera. That's yours, isn't it? I paused. Then said, ours technically. I have a co-founder. Google's buying it, they offered. We haven't accepted yet. There was a silence so deep I heard her shift in her chair. Avery, this is serious, I almost laughed. Now it was serious. Now that it was on the front page of the journal, Dad doesn't know, does he? She asked. No. Do you want him to? I don't care, she exhaled sharply. You know that's not true. And maybe she was right. Maybe some tiny fossilized piece of me did want him to know. To understand. To say I was wrong. You saw the world before the rest of us did. But I didn't build Astera for his approval. I built it because the system they worshipped was flawed. And I was done waiting to be invited to fix it. You should be proud of this, Juliet said, voice softer. I know we don't talk like we used to. You mean, at all? Yeah, that. She hesitated. Then you always played a different game. I think I just finally realized you were building the board. Then she hung up. No goodbyes, no congratulations, just that. And somehow it meant more than any toast in a fancy restaurant ever could. That night, as I reviewed Google's term sheet under the glow of our server lights, Rowan leaned against the glass wall behind me. I still can't believe this is real, she whispered. I stared at the offer, then back at our live dashboard, and said the words that would change everything. What if we don't sell? What if we don't sell? The words hung in the air like a loaded gun. Even Rowan, who rarely blinked during investor pitches, froze mid-sip of her black coffee. She leaned forward slowly. I'm sorry, I turned my screen around, showing her the valuation metrics, our projections, the press interest. The algorithm's prediction confidence under volatility scenarios. Everything we'd dreamed of, right there, validated. But suddenly, it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a ceiling. We've spent 3 years building something that could reshape the backbone of global finance, I said. And now we're about to hand it over for what, a payout and a quarterly roadmap. Rowan set her mug down hard. It's $2 billion, Avery. You'd still be CEO. We'd have resources, talent pipelines, market reach. What part of this feels like a bad idea to you? I stared at the server racks behind her. Astera was humming literally and figuratively. Its live learning engine was adjusting in real time to market sentiment pulled from millions of social threads, press releases, and trade anomalies. It's not a bad idea, I said. It's just not our idea anymore. Rowan crossed her arms. This isn't some indie record label. This is finance. We don't get to change the world without capital. I don't need capital, I replied. I need control. Her eyes narrowed. So this is about control. It's about vision, I shot back. We didn't yell. We didn't throw things. We were 2 women in a warehouse arguing over how to manage the weight of a billion-dollar engine. She paced. Do you even understand what saying no to Google means? She asked, quieter now. It's not just passing up money. It's signaling to the entire market that we think we're untouchable. We are untouchable, I said. No one else has what we've built. Rowan looked at me, really looked. I risked everything for this. I gave up tenure track at Stanford. I haven't seen my parents in 18 months. And you're telling me we walk away from the only guarantee on the table? I softened. I'm not walking away. I'm scaling differently. We pivot. Offer Google a strategic partnership instead of a buyout. We keep the engine. They get access to certain models. We maintain ownership. And we grow. She didn't say anything, just picked up her bag. I need to think, she muttered and walked out. She didn't come back that night. The next 48 hours were a blur. Meetings, model updates, legal consults. I rewrote the pitch deck 3 times. I called in advisors, mapped out go-to-market plans without external acquisition. Every hour that passed, the vision sharpened. And Rowan stayed silent. No texts, no emails, not even a Slack ping. I kept telling myself she needed space, but something felt off. By day 3, my lawyer flagged something strange. Background noise from a VC group we'd never engaged was suddenly asking about Astera's proprietary data handling methods. And not just casually, they'd gotten access to our anonymized pilot dataset, which meant someone had shared it, someone with credentials. I opened the activity logs. My heart didn't race, it didn't drop, it just stopped, flatlined. Rowan, 2 nights ago, downloaded a snapshot of our pilot results to an external device registered under her name. I stared at the timestamp. It was 20 minutes after she walked out of the office. I confronted her the next day. Calm, calculated, no yelling. She looked tired and guilty. I wasn't going to sell it, she said. I needed leverage. Something to prove that going solo wasn't reckless. I wanted to scare you into accepting the deal. I nodded. You did scare me, I said. But not the way you think. I revoked her credentials. I called our lawyers. She signed the exit agreement without argument, silent the whole time. And when she left the building, I didn't watch her go. I went back to my workstation alone now. The monitors still pulsed. The models still ran. But something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just a company anymore. It was a line in the sand. The next morning, the Google team followed up. Are we still proceeding? Their lead asked. I paused, glanced across the warehouse now quiet, without Rowan's late-night humming or sarcastic playlist commentary, and replied, We're not selling, but we are ready to scale. There's a strange kind of silence that follows betrayal. Not the kind that feels hollow or sad, just still, focused, surgical. After Rowan left, I moved her desk out of the shared corner. We used to joke about being mission control. I boxed up her old sticky notes and archived our internal threads. I even changed the office Wi-Fi password. Not out of spite, out of necessity. She wasn't coming back. And I had a company to run. 2 days later, my receptionist buzzed in through the intercom. Ms. Hartwell, there's a Mr. Kane here to see you. Says he's from Hawthorne and Ashbury. I blinked. That was Juliet's firm, one of the most prestigious legal powerhouses on the East Coast. Corporate litigation, mergers, banking compliance, they didn't just handle billion-dollar accounts. They wrote the rules that protected them. Send him in, I said, centering myself. When he entered, he looked exactly like the kind of man my father admired, salt and pepper, hair-tailored suit, leather portfolio in hand. The kind of man who believed in tradition and trusted only what had already succeeded. Ms. Hartwell, he greeted, shaking my hand. Thank you for making time. I gestured for him to sit. What brings Hawthorne and Ashbury to a Brooklyn warehouse? He smiled politely. Let's just say some of our clients are extremely interested in your technology. They've asked us to explore partnership structures on their behalf. I nodded. And Juliet, does she know you're here? There was the smallest pause, but I saw it. The crack. She's not involved in this conversation. Of course she wasn't. She never spoke about me at work. Not because she hated me, but because I didn't fit the narrative. The daughter who dropped out, the coder in a hoodie, the warehouse girl, the outlier. He cleared his throat. If I'm being candid, Ms. Hartwell, I was surprised to learn of your relation. Juliet has never mentioned a sister in the tech sector. I smiled, small, sharp. Let me guess. She never mentioned a sister who plays with algorithms. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. Good. Before the silence could settle, my operations lead appeared at the door. Apologies for the interruption. Avery, but the Goldman team is ready for the live demo. Mr. Kane's eyes flicked toward her, then back to me. Goldman Sachs. The recalculation in his gaze was instant. His voice dropped half an octave. I'd encourage you to consider our offer seriously. We represent the top financial institutions in New York. We can open doors you haven't even knocked on yet. I stood, offering a cool nod. Appreciate that. But I've learned to build my own doors. I didn't walk him out. I didn't need to. As the conference room door closed behind him, a strange wave of, not pride, but clarity swept over me. The same firm that once looked through me now looked for me. The system hadn't changed. I had become too big to ignore. That night, as I reviewed final prep for our Goldman demo, my phone buzzed. Juliet. Message: Douglas Kane just left your office looking like he'd seen a ghost. What exactly are you developing over there? I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, because I didn't owe her an explanation anymore. Instead, I turned back to our dashboard. Astera had just hit a 92% prediction accuracy in live markets. And we were only warming up. But while I was tracking numbers, I missed something far more dangerous. Someone else had been tracking us. The second Google offer didn't come in an email. It came in person. 3 of their senior strategy leads flew in from Mountain View. No press, no entourage. Just 3 people in business casual with tired eyes and billion-dollar intentions. They didn't bother with small talk. We're prepared to go up to $2.3 billion, one of them said. Full acquisition, no earnout games. Clean cash and retention. Rowan was gone. The data leak had been handled. And Astera was thriving. I glanced at the model's latest accuracy curve. 94.7%. We had quietly predicted a pharmaceutical merger 3 days before it hit the headlines. Everything I'd worked for was now on the table. So I asked them for something strange. Before I answer, I said I need 24 hours. But not for thinking, for drafting. They looked confused. That night, I called Juliet. She picked up on the second ring. "You only call when something big is about to happen," she said. "Right. So I need 5 hours of your time. And I'm going to pay your hourly rate." She laughed. "You can't afford me. You're not billing me. You're advising me, off record." That got her attention. By 2 a.m., I had a new deal structure. Not an acquisition, not a partnership. A reverse integration. Google wouldn't swallow us whole. They would fund Astera Global, a new semi-autonomous unit built within Alphabet's ecosystem, but retaining its original structure, leadership, and team. Full branding, full independence, full P&L authority. And I would serve not as a product founder under some VP, but as CEO of the unit reporting directly to Google's board. We wouldn't be absorbed. We'd be installed like software into their system on our terms. The next day, I laid it out in front of their team. This is not me saying no, I told them. This is me saying, if you're serious about redefining financial technology, then let me lead it, not bury it. Silence. One of them flipped through the document. "You want to remain CEO, inside, Google, yes. But more importantly, I want to protect the DNA of what we've built. No restructuring, no brand dissolution. You get market dominance. We get autonomy." Another one looked up. "You realize this isn't how these things go?" I smiled. "That's the point." 3 days of negotiation followed. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't war. Because deep down, they knew we were right. No team would rebuild Astera from scratch. No new manager could replicate the culture. And they weren't just buying tech, they were buying momentum. By the end of the week, we had terms, historic terms. Astera would become Alphabet's first standalone AI-driven market infrastructure unit, based in New York, led by me. We retained 87% of our original team full design control, and an option clause that, if triggered, would let us spin back out after 36 months at a valuation premium. In short, we didn't sell the company. We installed it into the bloodstream of big tech with a kill switch. When I told Juliet the final terms, she went silent for a beat. Then said, "You didn't win the game, Avery. You rewrote the fucking rulebook." And I believed her. The press release was scheduled for Tuesday. Google requested a joint press conference at the Four Seasons Midtown. A ballroom, spotlights, headlines. But I had one condition: my family would be invited. All of them. I didn't do it to show off or to rub it in. I did it because I knew something they didn't. This wasn't just a business deal. It was a cultural reckoning. The daughter they once dismissed as the coder was about to become the youngest female CEO to ever enter Google's boardroom chain of command. And for once, they'd have to see it with their own eyes. As I zipped up my blazer on the morning of the announcement, my phone buzzed. "Dad, we're on our way. Your mother said to tell you she's proud." Well, I'll see you soon. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get. I didn't need more. The room would do the rest. The ballroom was cold, not because of the temperature. The Four Seasons had climate control fine-tuned like a Swiss watch, but because of the tension humming just beneath the polished marble, the velvet chairs, the perfectly spaced step-and-repeat banners. The moment I stepped in, every conversation dimmed by half a decibel. It wasn't fear, it was recognition. The way people act when they realize the underdog didn't just survive, she rewrote the game, and they weren't invited. The press had already been briefed. The signs outside read, "Alphabet plus Astera, a new chapter in predictive finance." I walked past the front row, scanning the audience. And there they were, my mother elegantly understated in gray. Juliet, no courtroom confidence today, just quiet awe. And my father, rigid, tense eyes fixed on me like he was seeing someone he couldn't quite place. As I passed him, he stood. "Avery," he said, just loud enough for me to hear. I read the terms. I stopped. He cleared his throat, then added, voice tight, hesitant, "I didn't know you were capable of this." I met his gaze. "That's because you never bothered to ask." And then I walked on. The Google executive gave his speech first. It was fine, corporate, predictable. He praised Astera's unprecedented engine architecture, our culture of ethical disruption, our historic reverse-structured deal. All true, all safe. But the room didn't fully shift until I took the mic. I didn't have notes, I didn't need them. I looked out at rows of journalists, investors, analysts, and quietly but unmistakably, the three people who had once assumed I'd fade into obscurity. 3 years ago, I leased a warehouse in Brooklyn with money I didn't have for a company I couldn't prove, building a technology no one believed in. My own family called it a hobby. Legacy institutions said it was a phase. Some friends said I'd regret walking away from Columbia. But I didn't build Astera to prove anyone wrong. I built it to prove something was possible. The room was so still I could hear camera shutters. Today, Astera processes more real-time financial data than every quant desk on Wall Street combined. Not to disrupt, but to reveal patterns. We've been blind to systems, we've accepted volatility, we've misnamed as fate. I paused, letting the silence grow. And here's the truth. Innovation doesn't happen because the gatekeepers allow it. It happens when someone stops waiting for permission. I looked down at my father. He didn't blink. When I stepped away from the podium, the applause didn't explode. It built like a wave, gaining strength. And when it peaked, it wasn't because of me. It was because the idea had landed. That night, every single outlet ran the story. Avery Hartwell declines power. Builds it instead. The warehouse CEO who just redefined tech acquisitions. But that wasn't the best part. Not the valuation jump. Not the inbox flooding with requests. Not even the private call from the White House Economic Advisory Group. No, the best part came after the lights dimmed and the media scattered. Juliet approached first. Not as a lawyer, not as a sister trying to explain the family, just as Juliet. "I'm sorry," she said, "for not saying your name at the firm, for letting them think you were just the dropout." I looked at her for a long time, then nodded. "You weren't the only one." She hesitated. "I've been tracking your model. Quietly. I even bought into 3 funds using your prediction layer." I smirked. "You made money, I made more than the trust fund Dad gave me." We both laughed. And then, without planning it, hugged. It felt like truth, not nostalgia. And then came the final voice. My father. He stepped forward like someone approaching a courtroom they weren't sure they belonged in. "I underestimated you," he said. I didn't speak. I thought success looked like a firm handshake and a legal victory. But you built something that made those victories look small. I waited. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something I hadn't seen in years, a flash drive. "It's yours. The last copy of the old family estate documents. I want you to rewrite it, with your vision, with your legacy." I took it, not because I needed it, but because I wanted to end it on my terms. Later that night, I stood on the rooftop of our new Astera HQ overlooking Manhattan. We weren't outsiders anymore. We were the new establishment, just smarter, quieter, and far less interested in being liked. And for the first time, I wasn't carrying my family's rejection. I was carrying my own name and the weight of having changed everything. The view from the 47th floor didn't feel high, not in the way people talk about altitude and achievement. It felt level. Like I had finally reached the ground I was always meant to stand on. Below me, New York glowed, not like a city, but like a motherboard, alive, humming data streaming through its veins. Astera HQ had officially moved out of the warehouse and into our new home, a minimalist glass-wrapped tech cathedral in Midtown. The signage outside now read Astera and Alphabet Company, CEO Avery Hartwell. It still looked surreal, but not undeserved. Inside, our team was celebrating. Champagne flowed, screens glowed with coverage from every major financial outlet. Hartwell's hybrid model stuns Wall Street. Tech genius turned down power, then took more. Avery Hartwell is not the next Steve Jobs. She's the first Avery Hartwell. I could have gone back in, let them cheer, give a speech. But I didn't need a mic anymore. The story was already speaking for itself. Juliet found me on the rooftop. She had traded her courtroom armor for something softer: black sweater, high ponytail, no makeup. The version of her I remembered from when we used to sneak Pop-Tarts at 1 a.m. and watch illegal NASA live streams. She held out a glass of champagne. "No speeches?" she asked. "I think I've said enough." She smiled. "Not quite. I think you're just getting started." We stood in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't ask to be filled. Then she cleared her throat. "I've been thinking," she said. "You're expanding globally. You're going to need legal leadership with cross-jurisdictional experience." I looked at her. Slowly. "Are you saying you want in?" "I'm saying I'm done advising companies who try to own people like you." A beat. Then I said it without ceremony, General Counsel. Astera Global, full authority, full trust. You answer to me, you answer for me. She didn't flinch. I'll make the paperwork bulletproof. Good, I said. Because next year we're targeting London, Singapore, and Zurich. She raised her glass. To family, I shook my head. To alignment. The next morning, I arrived at Google's Cambridge Innovation Campus for the first internal strategy session. The walls were lined with Astera's signature blue. Our neural maps pulsed softly on screens. The signage didn't say, "Welcome to Google." It said, "Welcome to the new market engine." As I walked toward my office, I passed a young woman, early 20s, hoodie, messy bun eyes, locked on a dataset across 3 screens. I paused. She noticed me, startled, then froze. "Oh my God, you're Avery Hartwell," I smiled. "Last time I checked." I study your model. Your reverse integration strategy. My parents think I'm wasting my economics degree. They said what you did was impossible." I looked her dead in the eye. "Good. That means it's worth doing." She laughed a little too loudly, then apologized. Before I turned to leave, I added, "They'll understand one day, or they won't. Either way, build it." And I meant it. Back in my office, the flash drive my father had handed me sat untouched on the desk. The last copy of the original Hartwell estate plan. I'd been meaning to destroy it. But something stopped me. I plugged it in. The folders opened. Legal documents, asset maps, trust directives, all the things I'd once been cut out of. But tucked at the bottom was something else. A scanned photo. Old, grainy. Me and Juliet, maybe 10 and 12, building a fort out of court transcripts and old computer manuals in our father's study. We weren't pretending to be lawyers. We weren't pretending to be engineers. We were pretending to be something no one had invented yet. And now, it wasn't pretend anymore. That night, I wrote a new directive, not for the family trust, but for the Astera Foundation, a non-profit that would use our prediction models to support financial literacy, fraud detection, and micro-investment access for underbanked communities. I signed it alone. No board approval, no legacy rules, no permission, just vision. Because that's what they never understood. Legacy isn't something you inherit. It's something you build line by line, decision by decision, refusal by refusal. And by the time they realize you were serious, you're already too far ahead to be caught.